Welcome to episode number 120 of The Closing Table with Lawyers Title. I'm your host, Tamera Gaede, and today we're breaking down the biggest legal and contract changes impacting Texas realtors right after this.
Gather round the table, pull up a chair. Real talk, real growth, we're taking you there. From the first handshake to the final key. The wisdom you need to set your business free. It's the Closing Table with Lawyers Title. Tamera Gaede, she's your main arrival. Yeah, Tamera Gaede makes the vision clear. With Lawyers Title, your best year's here.
Welcome back. Again, I'm your host, Tamera Gaede. I have a returning guest today. She is what I consider my real estate expert. We've got some changes coming at you, and so we wanted to talk about this and more today. Welcome back to the show, Melissa Hailey, real estate broker, instructor, influencer, and serial volunteer. I mean, the list of accomplishments is impressive. So thank you so much for agreeing to come back on the show today, Melissa.
Absolutely happy to be back.
Well, we got a lot to talk about today. Big changes for Texas realtors, contracts, agency, water. We're going to talk about all of it. We have a lot to unpack today. So I want to get started.
Okay, a lot going on.
Okay, so we got proposed contract changes. They're out for a public comment. Realtors, make sure to tap in, make your comments on the contract changes before that window closes. Do we know when the window closes?
The end of March.
End of March. So you have until the end of the month to make those contract change comments. In the meantime, when do we expect the new contract to roll out?
The date on the contract is going to be effective May the 4th, but it probably won't be in everybody's zip forms and dot loop and all of the places until I would say last part of May or first part of June.
Last part of May 1st. Okay. So good time to get updated on what's coming out in late April, early May, something like that, end of May.
Yeah, I would say in the month of May, if you're a real estate professional, you probably need to take a contracts class.
Okay.
That would be my suggestion. May 2026, take a class.
Okay. Great advice. Great advice. Golden nugget, y'all. I want to talk about the major changes in the contract.
Okay.
That's a lot. So we're going to sit here for a minute.
Sure.
So first, let's talk about the legal holiday change.
Sure. Okay, so funny thing is legal holiday has been here in the contract for a long time, but not been a defined term. And so, what was your definition of legal holiday, Tamera?
When the title company is closed.
Right. And
plus other, anytime the title company is closed.
Right.
Because how are you supposed to deliver earnest and option or follow contract deadlines?
Well, sure. But what about banking holidays, which sometimes are in line with the title companies being closed, but not always, right?
Not always.
And in Texas, we've got, like Texas Independence Day. That's a legal holiday in Texas.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we don't have it off, but we should because that's a big one.
The broker lawyer committee said, we really probably need some definition around legal holiday. So there's a change in the contract that says that a legal holiday is going to now be defined by the Texas Government Code. You certainly can go look it up based on what the wording is in the contract. It's very, very specific. But I will say it does end up being, generally speaking, it's the federal holidays plus it's the day after Thanksgiving.
Okay.
So these will be your
I'm glad for
legal
day after
holidays.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
a good one.
That was a Texas holiday, wasn't a legal holiday, a federal holiday. So we kind of combined those two things in the Texas Government Code, and now it's a defined term. We know what days you can get that extra day. If it's a Saturday, Sunday, or a legal holiday, you now know what the legal holidays are.
Well, let us know what they put in the contract for the new generator language.
Sure. So, have we had any ice storms in Texas? Absolutely. Have we had some power outages due to, some significant weather events? Absolutely. So lots of folks have added generators to their home. It is now considered an improvement. So in the beginning of the contract, when we talk about what we're going to sell, we talk about all of the improvements and the accessories, what's included. Generator has now made the list of what is included in the house when you're selling it, unless you exclude that.
Okay.
So it's a
great
new
ad.
Yeah, it's a new add-on. Yeah.
I know that generators got really popular after Subagency. I mean, my dad went and got all his whole house outfitted because he was out of power for 10 days.
Yeah.
And it was cold in Austin.
And he is not alone. Lots and lots of people did that. So we've added generator as an improvement.
Nice.
It's important.
Okay, so let's talk about compensation next. Page 7 of the contract.
Oh, man. All right. Paragraph 12 has been so much fun for the real estate community over the last several years. So there was a lot of confusion in the marketplace about the way paragraph 12 was worded. And that, coupled with the fact that we still had a lot of broker-to-broker compensation going on, right, depending on what market you were in, really made figuring out how real estate professionals were getting paid more difficult. So there's a couple of things happening here that are really, really important. Number one is there's a change to the TREC contract, right? There's a change to paragraph 12. But in conjunction with that, there's the removal of broker-to-broker compensation being discussed on page 10 of the contract. Which it used to be there as like sort of a side note. And the Texas Realtors forms, like the listing agreement, are currently being considered for editing, and we're being told that in June, in conjunction with the new TREC contract, the new listing agreement will be out, and there will not be a place in the Texas Realtors forms for broker-to-broker compensation. That's like a seismic shift. That's as big as when we decoupled everything with the NAR lawsuit, right? And so because that's true, let's take a quick look at what's going on in the 1 to 4 family contract.
Tell us, yeah.
And I think we're going to be able to pull it up on the screen if you're watching on video, obviously not listening, but watching. So in paragraph 12, what we did is broker lawyer committee said, you know what, let's just put paragraph 12A1B back like it was. Which which was what every lender forever has just been like, paragraph 12A1B, that's for concessions. That's for, money in lieu of repairs, right?
Okay. Yep.
Or it's going to go towards the buyer's closing costs, maybe just in a negotiation. But that's money for the buyer to use outside of paying for a real estate fee. Then, additionally, we created an entire new section here of 12B, not 12A anything, 12B. And 12B is called broker compensation, and it's a whole paragraph just about broker compensation. But we did two things. One seems very similar to what we've had, that the seller would give some money to the buyer so that the buyer could pay their real estate agent, right? It's very common. It's being used quite frequently today in many sales contracts. That is still there. It's just moved down to 12B.
Okay.
But in addition, and in an effort to be, I'm going to call it progressive, right? In an effort to be somewhat progressive, the broker lawyer committee said, you know what, we need to have something called freedom of contract. This allows both parties to kind of have some equal access. So we added a paragraph that says the buyer will give money to the seller for the seller to be able to pay their agent. And I know if you're listening today and we're in a market where that's probably not something that people are going to ask for consistently, right?
Yeah.
That the buyer would pay the listing agent fee. But I just want to bring everybody's attention back to 2021.
Okay.
Right? So think about in 2021, there was no opportunity for a buyer to pay the listing agent's commission, right? And there wasn't any way really for the seller to pay the buyer's agent commission, not in the contract, because it was all done through the listing agreement. And so what was going on was people were saying, I'll buy your house for not $10,000 more or $20,000 more. It was like 50 or, it was crazy amounts more. Right. And that gave the buyer the ability to give the money to the seller, and then the seller could then pay all these real estate fees for both parties, right? Well, now if it's removed, let's think about how this contract could work. What if we were in a 2021 type situation again, and it was just a crazy, crazy seller's market? This allows a buyer another opportunity to say, I'm only going to pay $5,000 more for your house, but I'm going to pay your real estate agent, right? This changes that whole process of houses that didn't appraise. Buyers had to bring all that extra cash to closing, right?
Yes.
Because it was such a problem at the time. This, I think, makes us very progressive in the fact that we have that freedom of contract, that the seller can pay the buyer's agent or the buyer can pay the seller's agent, or obviously both parties can pay their own agent and not use this paragraph. That's a whole nother option.
Yeah, I think the flexibility is good. We're not in that market anymore. So.
We're not in that market, but I feel like we're prepared.
And if it comes back, it's okay, but not those interest rates.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That was a little crazy, right?
Yeah.
Now there is a part in here about expense limitation that is also new, and it goes right along with this. And it talks about the fact that, sometimes somebody's getting a loan that has fees involved that the buyer can't pay, right? Non-allowable expenses. Think like a VA loan.
Right.
And so it's pretty specific in here that it talks about the fact that if there are concessions that they need to be applied in a specific order. So those concessions in paragraph 12A1B have to be used in that order to help offset those things first. And then after we've exhausted everything in 12A1B, now we're going to exhaust everything in 12B, which is all of the compensation. So they're two separate places where the money is sort of delegated, if that makes sense.
Jesse, are you good? Makes sense? Okay, well, Jesse signed off.
Okay. All right, then we're good to go.
I think that's a great explanation because there are a lot of changes in that particular section of the contract. So taking some time here and really explaining how it works, it's going to be advantageous to the audience. So thank you for doing that.
And I think the why behind it, right? Understanding why the broker lawyer committee chose to make the change the way that they did. I think that's important.
What's next that we're going to talk about in the contract as far as changes are concerned?
Well, if you keep scrolling through the contract, the next change that's just important to note is paragraph 20 is federal requirements. And we've always had the paragraph A, 20A, because that's about FERPTA, but 20B is about this new FinCEN stuff. And if you're not aware as a real estate practitioner, you need to be aware about FinCEN because this will affect your cash transactions where there is an LLC or a trust that's purchasing the property.
This is a big deal.
It is a big deal. It's about money laundering. It's an effort from the federal government to squelch some of that. So if there's a mortgage, it's not a big deal, right? There's already money laundering stuff all built into mortgages. But on a cash deal, if it's an LLC if it's not a person, if it's not me personally, Melissa, paying cash, and I'm going to use an LLC, the government wants to know who's behind that LLC, who's behind that trust, right? Who's actually the human behind the company spending the money, again, in an effort to have this anti-money laundering, right? So the title companies are going to be collecting lots and lots of data. I was told it was like 180-something data points to ensure that they know who's really got the cash behind that, who's hiding behind the LLC, if that makes sense.
It does.
So there's a whole new paragraph for that.
That's going to really impact investors when they're purchasing deals. So that's an interesting paragraph. You guys make sure to get with us so we can help you understand FinCEN better. Fidelity has been very training forward on this topic. So the last few weeks, we've been seeing a lot of information about FinCEN. Actually, we had a required mandatory call we had to be on to all of us. And I'm in sales. I don't even deal with this stuff, and they want to make sure we're all prepared and we all understand what we're supposed to do moving forward. So make sure to get with your title company so they can explain to you if you're an investor paying cash, anybody paying cash that's purchasing with a trust or an LLC.
Yeah, absolutely. That'll be a big change. So there's just a note in there that's a notice to the parties that this is something that may come up, right? So that's new in the contract. And also paragraph 21 was a big change. And I want to explain what's going on with paragraph 21.
I like this change.
It looks nice and clean, right?
Yeah.
For those of you who can see it on the screen. It does look nice and clean. And I think it's important for us to kind of talk about this for a second because there was a couple of lawsuits that actually caused this change.
This was interesting.
It's an interesting story. So in the real estate space, if you were a real estate practitioner and you were in the middle of a contract and all of a sudden some notice needed to be sent, and I'm going to use a notice that's pretty common, like the notice to terminate, right?
Yes, that's a big one.
It needs to be sent in a certain amount of time, right? We got to do it before the option period ends and so on and so forth in order to protect the ability to get the earnest money. And then there's that notice about who's getting the earnest money, right? And historically, forever, all real estate agents were taught that if you receive something, that's the same as your client getting it. So if you get receipts, same as your client getting it. You get that inspection report, same as your client getting it. And if you get this termination notice, it was the same as your client getting it, right? Mm-hmm. It's this imputed notice. All right. So what happened was the courts didn't see it that way.
What happened?
So a buyer agent sent a listing agent a notice of termination. Within the time prescribed, it was like legit, like everybody would have been like, yeah, for sure. They should totally be terminating. They should totally get their earnest money back. But what happened is that the seller said, your contract says you have to deliver that notice to me. And you didn't deliver that notice to me. You delivered it to my agent.
Jesse's eyes are rolling back in his head right now.
Well, and frankly, the listing agent took it and gave it to their client. So it wasn't like the seller didn't see it. The seller was trying to get out of giving the earnest money back on a technicality. Twice.
Twice this happened, not just once.
Girl,
twice.
Twice to the same broker.
No.
In Houston. And
With
it was
two different
transactions.
Oh my gosh.
Two different transactions.
Two different buyers.
Two different buyers, two different sellers, two different properties.
What are the chances?
One
this
broker.
is a big deal.
It's a big broker in Houston. They have a lot of agents. So,
Wow.
I mean.
Okay. They're a bigger target.
They're a bigger target.
But still.
So we had a lot of discussion about this at the broker lawyer committee because the attorneys said on the, broker lawyer, the lawyers were like, well, that's actually correct. That's how it's written. And the agents were like, or the brokers on the broker lawyer committee were like, no. It would be a terrible, terrible idea to make a rule and to start training agents to, instead of giving this to the other agent, just giving it to the other agent's client mid-transaction.
But look, that's a quick way to make some realtors very upset.
Man.
Communicating to their client.
To their client.
Yes.
Absolutely.
No.
Absolutely.
No.
First of all, it's bad business between the two agents because, like you said, there'll be some animosity. Why are you talking to my client? Second, we don't even have to go into code of ethics stuff, but I mean, holy cow. And then third, isn't it going to be confusing to the consumer?
Yes.
Right? Like if you were a home seller and I was your agent and then Jesse's the buyer agent and he all of a sudden is emailing you, you're probably going to call me and
100%.
say, is this a scam? Who is this agent? Why are they sending me stuff? Is this legit? It would be confusing for the consumer.
Yes, I agree.
So the paragraph doesn't have a ton of changes if you see it up on the screen, but the changes it does have did two things. Number one, we took the facts out. I don't know if anybody else thinks this way, but it used to be like phone or fax. There was a place on the contract to write people's fax number, and I don't know when the last time I faxed a contract to anybody
I don't know
was.
how to fax.
But it was a long, long time ago. So it changed and it just says sent by electronic, whatever it says, electronic transmission, right? Overnight courier was sufficient, so we added that in as well, FedEx, whatever. And then we added it could be delivered to the party or their agent. Okay. So we're still not, as the agent, as the broker, not a party to the contract. However, you are allowed to deliver the notice to us under this whole concept of imputed notice, right? Okay. So it now has a place for the buyer and the seller's address, phone, and we have 2 email lines because we might need 2. And then the buyer agent in the same fashion to the agent's address, phone, or email.
Got it.
And so I really just feel like this was an important lesson in like every little word in the contract makes a difference. So,
yeah, it does. Apparently.
Yeah. But good news is now we are all good to go.
Okay.
But I do want to just kind of keep scrolling down the contract because the very next paragraph, paragraph 22. Now, this is just a formatting change. It's not really a whole lot of new stuff.
Okay.
But it looks so different. And the reason that it was done this way is because there were a lot of comments, and the broker lawyer committee and everybody at TREC really reads every comment. Every time somebody makes a public comment, they get read.
Oh, good. Go in and make your public comments.
Absolutely. And so we got a lot of public comments that said, who picked the order that these attached forms were in? And it really wasn't any specific order. I'm sure at some point, once upon a time, they put a handful in order, and then every year a new one would get added. So it would just get added on the end.
Sure.
So there was no rhyme or reason. Now they're sort of in these categories, right? So there's the financial.
My brain likes that.
Attachments. The lease attachments, the statutory disclosure attachments. So I kind of like the way that it's laid out. It's really more formatting than anything, but the people spoke and we were making big changes. So we figured now was the time to do it.
Yeah, so, it looks great. Yeah. I like it. Very organized.
Yeah.
Okay, so anything else in the contract that we need to talk notable? We need to talk. Oh, look at all those.
Yep.
Strike throughs. Last
but not least on the contract, here's one last thing that I want to point out, and this is page 10 of the contract. And I mentioned a moment ago that we kind of took out that little tiny sentence at the bottom. It wasn't even a paragraph that said broker to broker compensation is. It was sort of an FYI for the title company, but it was getting used incorrectly all the time. So in an effort to not just remove it and make people think, oh, well, where did that go? We reformatted this page as well. So this is a complete reformat of page 10. And at the top, you've got a top half and a bottom half of the page. Top half of the page is one agent and one broker has the seller and one has the buyer. And then the bottom half of the page is intermediary.
Okay.
If there's an intermediary, who's the broker, and then who are the two agents that are doing the deal together?
Like it.
Right. So it's just reformatted, but that little sentence is gone about compensation sharing, completely been removed.
Okay, so we want to talk about water for a little bit. We got some big changes as it references to water and water. We got a new water disclosure, new language in the contract. So we're going to talk about page 5 of the contract now. Why don't you break down the changes we have for water, groundwater, and surface water rights?
Sure. And that's what it's all about is groundwater, surface water rights. And for realtors that have been in the business for a while, this has been in our Legal 1 and 2 updates for a while that we've been teaching and just going a little deeper on groundwater, surface water, just so that realtors would be aware, right? Because if you're a city dweller, if you're in town and all your water comes from, the city of whatever, you may just not be nearly as aware as an agent out in a rural area where they have ponds and tanks
wells and all kinds
lakes
of stuff.
and
Yeah.
right, wells, all this, right.
That's so gross.
Yeah, septic systems,
septic system.
Yep. So now as part of paragraph 7, there's this huge new section about it's actually a seller's disclosure. That's what it's called. Seller's disclosure about groundwater and surface water rights. And so now there's this mini section of a seller's disclosure built into the contract. And option number 1 that they can check is that the buyer's already received this notice. Well, the notice,
talk about that next.
We're going to talk about that next. It's a 2-page long document.
Oh my gosh.
Checkbox number 2 is the buyer hasn't received it yet, but they're going to give it soon, right? Kind of like we have with the seller's disclosure. Same concept. If you haven't received it, you're going to turn it in soon, and the buyer has rights to terminate.
Okay.
But paragraph 3 says, but the seller's not going to deliver it. And if they're not going to deliver it, they have to meet every single one of these things,
all of
A,
them.
B, C, D, and E. All of them must be true. And if they are all true, then they don't have to provide any disclosure, right? So again, here we are with those city dwellers.
Yeah.
Right? If your city water is your main source of water, probably all of these are going to be true.
Yeah, we're living in number 3.
Right. If you're a city-focused, in-town realtor, you're probably checking box number 3 and moving on and having a great day. Mm-hmm. If you are on the outskirts in any way, shape, or form, you might be checking box 1 or 2 and attaching this other document, and it's 2 pages long. It's a lot of disclosure from the seller's perspective about what rights they are conveying when they sell this piece of property.
I think the clarity is important.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so tell them the story about that rural community with the shared wells.
Well, I think that it's important for real estate practitioners to just know that water is there's a lot of questions and concerns about water, right?
Yeah, Salina, water is so expensive.
Right. And some of it is the fact that we probably don't have enough water for, today, much less into the future, right? So there's concerns about that. But part of our contractual problem with water is that the state has, our elected officials, God love them, have made many different ways for us to obtain water, right? And so we've got the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, the TCEQ. Realtors check that website sometimes when it pertains to, like, for example, a mud, but they also manage, well drilling, things like that. But we have MUDs, PIDs, SUDs,
Tiers.
WCIDs.
I don't even know about a WCID.
Yep, we got wells. Like there's just all of these things, right? And then we've got this surface water and groundwater, which it's water that's pooled, right? So think like a stock tank, right?
Yeah.
Or a lake or something like that. And so there's all these different ways that water is used, and there's all these different ways that water is regulated.
And regulated.
Yeah, supplied and regulated. That's a good way to put it. And so what has happened is that developers, as they develop, they try to find ways to provide the services they need, right? That's their job. I got this 100 acres out in the middle of nowhere. I'm going to build some houses. How am I going to get some water to these people? That's it's an important part of the development of the community. Right?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit. And so we have all of these mechanisms, and sometimes the process is long, it's expensive, and one of the problems that we're having in some areas of Texas, not so much in North Texas, but in some areas of Texas, is a developer will come in and say, I'm going to buy this land, but it's going to be cost prohibitive for me to put in a mud or a PID.
Okay.
I can't do that to bring the infrastructure in. And so what they've done in some communities, I don't know how many there are, but I know it's a problem, and it's been brought up in the broker lawyer committee, is some communities, they will buy the land and then they'll drill a well.
Yeah.
They'll build as many houses as that well can support, and they'll put those houses in a shared well agreement.
Did you know about this, Josie?
And if they put them in a shared well agreement, that only operates for those houses, right? Well, then they still have, let's say that's 10 acres. Well, they still got 90 acres left. Let's just go build another well over here.
So interesting.
And put in
I'm
another
not sure
well
in a good way.
and service another little small portion of the neighborhood by another well.
Interesting.
So yeah, your neighbor may not be getting water from the same water supply source that you are, because you might be across the neighborhood from each other.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah. So in that effort to try to make sure that when somebody sells a property, that the buyer knows what rights they have to their water.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a big deal if you're getting it from the city.
Sure.
They're just providing it to everybody.
Yeah.
But let's just think about that guy that's selling his house and he's on a shared well agreement, and the person who's buying it needs to understand how that operates.
I agree.
Right? So that's what this water disclosure kind of thing came about. And I'll tell you what, they worked on it for years before I got onto the broker lawyer committee. They have worked on it with expert after expert after expert, and we have heard from so many people just in my short time there that this is what they litigate. This is their entire job, is they are attorneys that litigate water drama. And they've just come and said, here's some ways we think we can make it as easy as possible for the consumer to avoid litigation when it comes to water. That's the whole goal.
Okay.
There.
All right. So we've covered it in the contract. We do have a new water disclosure. We're just going to kind of...
Just quick overview of it.
Quick overview.
Because it's a lot. And you don't need it unless you're, again, checkbox 1 or 2, and you're going to have to provide it.
And reach out. We can get you some education on it.
Absolutely. So this water disclosure, and I think it's up here on the screen, it starts off giving all of these definitions of the types of water, right? Because there's a lot of types of water there. And then under paragraph 2, if you want to scroll down some, Jesse, on that, it talks about here, do I have a well? Do I have groundwater? And what access do I have? And what access am I selling when I sell this property, right? And so the seller would have to complete this information, and the buyer has to receive it. And it operates like a seller's disclosure.
Yeah, that's what it looks
we're
like.
used to, right? The regular general seller's disclosure. Seller has to give you the info. Buyer has to sign off on it, say they got it. They don't have to love it or hate it. They just have to agree that they got it. And then they all need to make the best informed decision in order to move forward with the transaction. That's what it's really all about.
I like this. The PID addendum was another one that I had a big appreciation for because of where I live and watching people in my community be completely taken off guard at the increase, the bump in taxes to pay for the PID. So I'm out where I live, okay, and there's so much development north of me. I think this is an important disclosure. So,
well, and that I think that's an important fact, though, because you said out where the development's happening. Because if you're in town, you already have that infrastructure.
Yeah, you don't care about this.
Right, but where the developers are is they're developing out onto the outskirts. So the people that are selling farther out and the people that are building farther out, these are the tools they're using to bring the infrastructure, because the cities don't have the funds, and they won't have the funds until they have houses to pay taxes. And therefore, here's these developers coming in going, let me figure out another way to do it.
Well, as a buyer, I would want to know where what I would want this disclosure.
Yeah.
This is important when buying a house. And look, it just happens a lot where you don't really understand what you're buying till you get into it. And I think having clarity on this and discovery on this is important.
Yeah.
So
it gives a definite must give disclosure from the seller to the buyer so that they can make the best informed decision before they move forward.
Okay, I want to pivot because I want to make sure that we wrap up on time.
Sure.
So we're going to talk about the death of subagency, really. And, I mean, it's a big deal,
Yeah,
but I
it
don't
is.
think we have to dive too deep into
Sure.
it, right?
Yep.
So let's clarify. You said it was no longer NAR rule. It's now Texas law.
Correct.
Okay, so explain.
Yeah, so there was a rule in the NAR rules that said after the Sitzer-Burnett stuff and all of the lawsuit stuff shook out, the NAR rule said you had to get a written agreement.
Yep.
That's what it said. It said a written agreement. Didn't say a representation agreement. It just said you had to get a written agreement when you were working with a buyer consumer,
Sure.
right? And in Texas, all we had was representation agreements, right? We had a buyer rep agreement, we had a listing agreement. Those were the two choices. And as far as buyer representation, Texas Realtors even created, back when all that happened, they created the short buyer rep agreement.
Yep.
So we have like the long form.
Right, the 3 page, five pages.
or something,
Okay,
right.
sorry, yep.
And then we created this 1 page short form. And I feel like, overall, as a general rule, realtors kind of just kept rolling with the flow,
Yeah.
right?
Well, not at first.
Yeah, not at first, but we've made big strides over the last several years.
Yes.
Well, so now this is like the next step. So now instead of it just being a rule from NAR that you have to have a written agreement, now Texas Realtors advocated last year in the legislative session to have subagency removed from our stuff, which means it is now Texas law. The way they had it all done when they removed subagency is they said, well, now you have to have a written agreement. So now it is Texas law that every real estate practitioner, realtor or not, you must get a written agreement before you go open into the front door.
And that was effective January 1st.
Effective January 1st.
Yeah.
So Texas Realtors gave us another form. Go
We
figure.
have another form.
Yep. So we have what's called the Unrepresented Customer Showing Form. It's Texas Realtors Form 1508. And so I'm just going to kind of chunk it down. I don't know if this is the best way, but I'm going to chunk it down into levels. Level 1 is you're a buyer. You want me to open a front door. You don't want to hire me to do that. So you're not going to sign a representation agreement. If I choose to, and with my broker's permission, right? It's a broker policy permission, right? I can have you, Tamera, sign an unrepresented showing form. In that form, it is very, very specific. The TXR form is very, very specific that I cannot give you any advice. I cannot give you any opinions, not just on this house, but on real estate transactions in general. Mm-hmm. And I cannot collect any compensation. All I can do is open the front door.
Just opening the door.
Opening the door.
Okay.
So that's level 1.
Level 1.
Now, then you say, Melissa, but I really want to know what the next steps are. And I'm like, Tamera, I can't tell you because I don't represent you. You signed this piece of paper right here that says.
But I have another form.
But I have
I'm
another
sorry, that
form.
was too early.
Yeah.
I should have let you finish. I'm sorry.
But that's it. No, that's it. So now we could say, well, I have another form, and this is a representation agreement.
Yep.
Now you, just like we've always had since Sitzer-Burnett.
Yep.
The short form or the long form.
Yep.
So I could then say, Tamera, I'd like you to sign one of these, and now I can represent you. Now, if my broker allows me to use the short form, one of the options is I can continue to just show you houses with limited representation. So now I can answer your questions, but I can charge a fee for that. Mm-hmm. But again, that's a broker policy, whether or not they allow it. And if they allow it, how do they pay it? Because any fee you collect doesn't go to the agent. It goes to the broker.
That's right.
Right? Or hopefully you would have trusted me enough because I showed you a house and now you believe, that I'm a human and that you like me. We hit it off. And hopefully you'll just sign the longer buyer representation agreement because that gives you better protection, me better protection. And at the end of the day, I'm going to collect that fee for all of the services, not just for showing the house.
Got it.
Yep. So does that kind of make sense? So it's like level 1, level
for
2,
sure.
level 3.
I mean, we already had level 2 and level 3, so we're just catching up on level 1, which is just you're opening the door for free and that's it.
For
no advice,
free.
no nothing. You're just opening the door.
Yep. And not allowed to charge anything if you use the Texas Realtors form.
Okay.
It's very clear on like bullet point number 2 or 3 on there. No compensation.
And all of this is already effective. So
Effective as of January 1st.
we should already be doing this.
Yeah, and hopefully the broker has had some level of training with their agents to say this is our policy, right?
Yeah.
Because I believe from my conversations with other brokers, there are brokers out there that say we don't use the unrepresented form. There are other brokers out there that say we don't use the unrepresented form or the short form.
Yeah.
Right. So the broker gets to decide what level of service they want to allow their agents to provide to consumers.
Yep. So very important to reach out to your broker.
Absolutely.
Okay. I think we need to stop here for today.
Okay.
Is there anything else that you think is really a big deal that we need to talk about?
I think this is all of the big contract stuff that we need to cover, but I do have one more little nugget that I think is
I love nuggets.
Just something special. Let's call it special. The seller's disclosure notice from the Texas Real Estate Commission is the short version of the seller's disclosure notice. And then there's the Texas Realtors one, which has more stuff.
Yeah.
We have taught forever that the TREC seller disclosure notice was exactly mirrored to the Texas Property Code. What was in the code was that's what we're disclosing, period. And a year-ish ago, the TREC went through the Sunset Commission thing with it's a Texas government deal where the Sunset Commission looks at all the different governmental agencies to ensure that they're still operating as they need to be and all of those things. And the Sunset Commission said, we think you should also disclose these handful of things. It was like 5 things.
Okay.
And the broker lawyer committee went, nope, because you need to, legislators, Sunset Commission people, if you want that, you need to put it in the property code and then we'll put it in the disclosure. But that is not what ended up happening. Because TREC basically said, look, we do what the Sunset Commission says so that they don't shut us down. That's the power that they have, is they could shut us down. We don't want to be shut down. None of us want TREC to be shut down. That'd be a bad day in real estate. And so the broker lawyer committee said, okay, fine, we'll go ahead and put these things in here. So there is a revision to the seller's disclosure notice. It's got a handful of new things. But I think it's important to note that they didn't come from the property code. They didn't come from the actual law, which is normally what that would do. They came from recommendations from our elected officials. And so they're there now.
Okay.
They're out for public comment. Personally, I think I'm not alone in saying that it's probably a slippery slope to just allow elected officials to go and add this and add that. However, that's the reality of where we are, and it does need to go through. It does need to go forward so that we can preserve the integrity of the whole real estate profession.
Yeah. Understood. Okay, so we need to also pay attention to the changes in the seller's disclosure.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, and that's a great pivot. We're going to be starting up, as lawyers title, contract changes classes in May. So make sure to reach out to me so that we can get you updated with all the latest changes. Make sure that you understand when you go write a contract for your buyers or sellers. And that's a wrap on episode number 120. Thank you again, Melissa, for coming on the show. My real estate expert. I appreciate your time, and I always reserve the right to have you back.
Absolutely.
So, again, I'm your host, Tamera Gaede. If you like my content, you're really going to love my escrow team. So give me an opportunity to reach out to you about your title needs and make it a great day.
Gather round the table.